Welcome to a jam-packed Bet Park Saturday, live from the Sportsbook here at Parx Casino in Bensalem. I'm your host, Jeff Skversky, taking you from 12 to 2 here on PHLY Sports. Wow, what a Saturday today we have in store for you. Unbelievable day. I love this today. You have the Eagles rookie camp, Phillies at Marlins, who, by the way, have won 4 straight games with Don Mattingly as manager. We're going to check in and talk to long-time Hall of Fame baseball writer Jason Stark. Plus, you got the Kentucky Derby coming up at 6:57. The Union are playing. You have Sixers Celtics Game 7 in Boston. And then last but not least, Flyers Hurricanes second round, Game 2. How about the Philadelphia Flyers? And that's where we're going to start the show today. Flyers, this unbelievable run. Not many had the Flyers sitting in this position for just a second time in 14 years. The Flyers are in the second round of the playoffs. Are they playing with house money? Again, not many expected the Flyers to be in this position, but here we are with a shot to take down Rod Brindamore's Carolina Hurricanes. And who better to talk to about the Philadelphia Flyers than legendary, longtime Flyers play-by-play man Jim Jackson, joining us here on Bet Park Saturday. Jim, how's it going?
Going great, Jeff. How are you?
Great to talk to you. Now, obviously, a lot has been made of this Flyers' amazing run, hottest team in hockey since mid-March. Are they playing with house money? I mean, Jim, I imagine you did not see this coming as much as you were around this team, or did you see this coming?
Didn't see it coming to this degree. I did feel they had a chance to make the playoffs when a lot of people were doubting them, but to actually then move on to the second round, this is great. And I think from a fan's perspective and from the broadcaster's perspective and the people who cover the team, maybe it is house money, because even if the Hurricanes sweep the Flyers, to me, it's been a great year, right? So I guess that's the definition of house money. But don't tell Rick Tocchet and do not tell the players anything about house money. That's not how they're treating it. They feel, hey, we're 12 wins away from the Stanley Cup. Let's go for it. And, Carolina, they played 4 times this year. All the games went to overtime or a shootout. So they were right there with them, although the history between the two teams is not great lately. I mean, I think it's something like 16 of 18 the Hurricanes have beaten the Flyers. But that's regular season. This is a playoff series. It can be really different. They have to attack certain weaknesses, and there aren't many for this Carolina team. And the Flyers are going to have to play closer to the way they played in the first 3 games of the Penguin series as opposed to the last 3. But they have a shot. Again, everyone nationally doubting them, saying, will the magic continue? They're kind of making this all about a magical run by the Flyers when this really has to do with the Flyers being one of the best teams in the NHL down the stretch and taking care of business against the Penguins.
Yeah, you talk about Carolina's success against the Flyers. The last I saw was 8-1-1 are the Hurricanes in their last 10 against the Flyers. But to your point, yes, they have played them very closely this year, despite losing 3 of 4. And look, I know Rick Tocchet talked about it yesterday about, he doesn't really buy into the house money stuff. Don't tell him about that. He doesn't want to hear it. But he does, as a motivator, at times, he will bring it up to this young team, to this group that, hey, look, nobody expected us to be here, at least on the outside. Rick Tocchet, obviously he is pushing the right buttons with this young team. From what you have seen behind the scenes, what has made Rick Tocchet so successful as the head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers?
Well, he's a great communicator. That's one thing. When he has a problem with a player, he addresses it. And he always wants the players, when they have a problem with him, to go to him. John Tortorella did a great job kind of establishing a foundation here with this team of a hard team to play against, certainly installed a defensive system, all that. And that's part of where they're at right now. But he wasn't the communicator that Toc is. And I think a lot of the players on this team have found that refreshing. And that's really helped. He's pushed a lot of the right buttons. Some of them were difficult situations. The Matvei Michkov situation has not been an easy one to handle, but he's gotten to the point where now, he understands Matvei Michkov's got to play to keep his spot in the lineup, as he found out in the Pittsburgh series. And so he's pushed a lot of the right buttons. He's made line changes at the right time. Obviously, he's relied on his goalies at the kind of the right time. He got Sam Harrison to play better down the stretch. And Vladar's just been a rock all year. So he's done a lot of great things. Didn't get to be nominated for the Coach of the Year in the NHL, but certainly deserved consideration. It's been a tough year that way. There's a lot of great coaching jobs this year in the NHL, but he really has done a tremendous job.
You have been the play-by-play guy with the Flyers since the early 90s. You've been around this team a very long time, taking over for Gene Hart. You've had amazing calls over the years. What has been your favorite? And I love the Cam York call, obviously for them to beat the Penguins and move on. What has been your favorite call as a broadcaster of the Flyers?
Yeah, it's 33 years, Jeff. That's a tough one. There's a lot of calls in there.
All right, how about this run? Let's start with this run.
The most memorable call ever was the Primo goal, just because that was in 2000. That was the longest game, still is the longest game in the modern history of the NHL. So you're part of NHL history. Was that my best call? I don't think so. I was just screaming, and I have no idea what was coming out of my mouth. The Cam York call meant a lot to me because I was able to pay homage to Bernie Parent, and this whole season's been about Bernie in a lot of ways. Obviously, the number one was in the ice during the regular season. They're wearing the patches, the mask, as far as the player of the game in the locker room afterwards. So there's clearly Bernie's been on the mind of this team and of the fans all year long. So that was my last broadcast of the year. The Nationals come in now, so we don't do any more broadcasts. So I wanted to pay some kind of respect to Bernie, and just came out as after Cam scored. So I do like that call. When Brian Boucher made the save in the shootout in 2010, that was a call that I liked, because for once I was a minimalist. I didn't talk too much. I just said Boucher the save and the Flyers go to the playoffs. So there's been so many. Jeremy Roenick's goal in 2004, when I pretty much had no oxygen left by the time he scored, is one that a lot of fans bring up to me. But the one with Cam York, if I was going to have a last call this season, it was a good one to have.
Do you have to, I don't want to say rehearse them, but do you in your mind go, just even having done it for over 3 decades, have to say to yourself when you're in a moment like this and just say, just stay out of my own way? Like, do you even have those thoughts, or are you just such in a routine of doing it that it's second nature? But what goes through your mind when you're in those moments? Do you say to yourself, stay out of my own way, or shut up, or be quiet? Like, how do you approach it?
Well, I rehearsed a call once. It was my second year still on radio, and the Flyers knocked off the Rangers in the playoffs, and it was a sweep. So going into Game 4, I kind of said, "Oh, if they win this, let's have some kind of really good line." And I said something to the effect of, "They sweep the crown off the champion." And it just fell flat. So I don't rehearse them anymore. In all honesty, I did want to say it's a beautiful thing. So if you call that rehearsing, maybe I did, but that's not really. I just wanted to get that line in somewhere. But for the most part, I usually just whatever comes out of my mouth is what I see at that time. When they clinched the playoff spot against these Hurricanes in the second to last game of the season, if they had won in overtime, it would have changed the call. They won in a shootout. When it goes to a shootout, you can kind of prepare. And I wanted to, again, pay homage to Bush, who was standing next to me in the booth. And I did almost the same exact call that I did when he made the save in the shootout to get the Flyers in the playoffs in 2010. But these are not things that I really think of before the game. You might think of them as you're leading up to the moment. But as I found way back when, 1995, that was, rehearsing and having almost a scripted call doesn't usually work.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this run has been a lot of fun. And I remember I was talking to Scott Hartnell a few weeks ago just about how much fun 2010 was. And I even mentioned this to Danny Briere a few weeks ago. 2010 was so much fun when you think about what they did against the Bruins in that series and getting all the way to the Stanley Cup final against the Blackhawks. But there's something to be said about this run because it is unexpected. How much fun has this been in your mind, not just for yourself behind the mic, but for the fan base and this city? Because as we talked about when you first came on, that this necessarily wasn't expected.
Right. And there's a big difference between 2010 and this year. 2010 came after 2 years in which they had been in the playoffs. In fact, in 2008, they went to the conference finals. What makes this one even maybe a little more special, that was kind of 2010 was just magic. And a lot of people are trying to make this a magical run. And in some ways it is. But that one felt like everything kind of fell their way. The matchups fell their way. This team has really had to earn everything they've gotten. Obviously, the 3.8% number comes out there. That was their chance, coming out.
Yeah, Rick Tocchet uses that once in a while.
Absolutely. Oh, like that, right? He says, but I mean, basically, it's a situation where this has the feel of the beginning of something. Whereas that was kind of the continuation of the team that was in contention. This is a very young team that has been out of the playoffs 5 straight years. The fan base, although I've always known it was there, it was rumbling below. But when you're losing and you're not making the playoffs, there's just not that vehicle to express it. And I wanted confirmation that if the team did get into the playoffs again, we would see this kind of orange mania, whatever you want to call it. And it's there. I mean, it's just exploded, and I love to see it. But this is the beginning. Dan Hilferty, Heath Jones, Danny Briere, now Rick Tocchet, their whole plan all along was to get this team to where they are a consistent contender. Not a consistent contender to make the playoffs, a consistent contender to win the Stanley Cup. They want this team to be at the point where every year, Jeff, when you go to your websites, or maybe you're old school like me and you still go to the Hockey News Yearbook, at the beginning of the season, the Flyers are going to be one of those 5 or 6 or 7 teams that have a legitimate chance to win the Stanley Cup. And I think they're getting closer to that. I mean, I think next year there's going to be some people predicting the Flyers to be a legitimate contender, especially if they make a couple tweaks here and there. And so that feeling of being there as something is just starting to take off. Didn't have that in 2010. I have that here this year, and it makes it even more special.
Yeah, and you have to give a lot of credit to Keith Jones and Danny Briere sticking to this course. And it's been hard because you're kind of in that second rebuild since 2010. And now you have to wonder, will this run, whatever happens in the series against Carolina, will this kind of accelerate the Flyers to go, all right, let's bring in some big names this offseason. Let's make some big moves to get this team over the top versus just staying the course and building this thing slowly.
Right. And I mean, Danny Briere said at the beginning of this year, or actually going into the offseason of last year, that the subtraction part of this rebuild was over, and now it's the addition. And he added Dan Vladar, and he added Trevor Zegras, and he added Christian Dvorak, who have all had tremendous. Obviously, Vladar's the MVP of the team. Zegras, I mean, brought so much offense, and Dvorak, don't even get me started. He's done so many things for this team. So the addition part started there. The addition will continue now, and it's continuing also with young players, Porter Martone, Denver Barkey, Alex Bump. These have all been added to the mix this year. But it's also going to, I think, continue with maybe another veteran or two being added as you move along. Flyers have really almost as talented a group of wingers as any team in the league. They probably need a little more depth at center. They may need another defenseman. They may need some moves in other areas. But they're getting to the point now where you're looking for the areas you need to add to, and now you're going to be able to go out. They have cap space. They have draft capital. They can go out and get those things. So they're definitely at a different part of the rebuild. I don't know if this accelerated it or not, Jeff, because they have been so, I mean, right along whether they were losing or winning. I mean, 2 years ago, they almost made the playoffs too, but they still traded Sean Walker to get a first-round pick, which might have kept them out of the playoffs that year, to be honest. They missed that by such a small margin, having a defenseman the caliber of Sean Walker, who's now the enemy in this series. I mean, having that guy might have helped get them across the line into the playoffs 2 years ago. But they were very set at that point to getting assets, and they continued to do that through the next year or two after that. And now they're to the point where they're accumulating assets. So it's going to be a very exciting offseason. I think they are going to try to tweak this. I don't think they're going to sit here and say, well, this team is good enough. Now, maybe this team goes on a run all the way to the cup. If they do that, that changes everything. But if the team gets eliminated, let's say in the second round or even the next round, I still think Danny and Jonesy are going to be out there looking to improve this team to continue the upward trend. Next year's going to be tough. Ask Ottawa. Ottawa made the playoffs for the first time in a long time last year, and they had to scramble so much just to make the playoffs this year, and then they get swept in the first round. It's going to be tough. They're going to have to follow this up next year. So I don't think they're going to stand pat. So I think you're going to see this continue as they look to make this team better and better.
What have you seen behind the scenes, the makeup of this young group? You talk about Porter Martone coming in here, has really just been electric since he came to the Philadelphia Flyers. But overall, this entire group, what have you seen? It's almost been like a light switch has gone off since mid-March. And you look at what they have done since that point. I believe it's March 11th. They're the hottest team in hockey. When you see this team behind the scenes, was there like a flip of a switch that you saw or you witnessed that kind of sparked all this?
I have a different approach on this, Jeff, when I look at this season. I look at this season as a season that was very good except for 1 month. They, on January the 6th, the Flyers were 6th in the NHL in points percentage. They were in a very good spot, better than where they finished. Sixth position is that gets you into the second round of the playoffs and maybe gives you a chance to maybe even sneak into the conference finals. So They were very good. They beat Anaheim that day in the 6th. Everything looked good. On the 8th, they lost they lost in overtime to Toronto. Scott Laughton scored a shorthanded goal. It sent the game into overtime. They lost in overtime, and they spiraled after that. Tampa Bay swept them in a couple games at home, and they ended up having that terrible month of January. But they were 6th in the NHL through the first half of the season because that January 6th was their halfway point. Then they struggled. The Olympic break comes, and since the Olympic break, they were again in the top 5 or 6 of the league in points percentage. So if you look at it that way, this team played in the top 5, 6, 7 of the NHL for all but about a month of the season. So I don't think it was a switch that actually got flipped. Being around this team all year, they had confidence. They were doubted by everybody all year long. And then when they swooned in January, everybody said, told you so, told you so. And they didn't have much leg to stand on. But even through that time, I never saw their confidence waver. They said, we just got to get this turned around. And the break did come at a good time for them. They utilized it well, made some tweaks to their defensive system, and they came out of the break, lost the first game, but after that, one of the best teams in the NHL through the end of the year. So they really took advantage of that. But I don't think it was like they were bad all year and then they just got good on March 11th and they snuck into the playoffs. It was more they were really good the first half of the year, had a terrible January, which almost basically crushed their season, but then they were able to respond from that and make the charge down the stretch as one of the top NHL teams, and they legitimately earned the playoff spot. They had 98 points. No team has not made the playoffs with 98 points. So this is they just got hot, snuck in, and it's a nice little story. This was a good team that had a slump, had to overcome that slump, and did, and now they're a dangerous team.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, the way you put it there, because, you see this day in and day out. So when you look at now this entire series against Carolina, a team they have never faced before in the playoffs, what do you think it's going to take for the Flyers to beat this team? Obviously, we talked about at the top of this that they have struggled historically against Carolina and have lost 3 or 4 this year, although they have been close. What do you think it's going to take for this team to beat the Hurricanes?
Couple things. I think number one would be, patience isn't quite the right word, but don't get frustrated. And I say this to the people who are going to be watching the series too. There may be long stretches of play where the Flyers are bottled up in their own zone. This is Carolina. They check like no team in the NHL. They're north-south. They get the puck in, and they go after you, and you have no room to move. You have to make quick plays, get it out, and then they fire the puck from everywhere. They've led the league in shots, or at least shot differential, for like 7 straight years. Rod Brind'Amour is a tremendous coach. He's done a great job putting this team together, and they play a system. They came in for that 4th matchup, the one the Flyers clinched the playoff spot, sat 6 regulars, and I couldn't tell the difference because all the guys who replaced the regulars played that same style. Right. They were just all over the Flyers. So they're going to be long stretches. As fans, don't get too frustrated at that. It's not going to look pretty. But the players, more importantly, have to just protect the house, rely on your goalie. You've got a good one, and you're going to get outshot most likely. And so then number 2 would be when you get your chances, you have to take advantage. Flyers are going to have to be opportunistic in this series. That includes the power play, which has been obviously a point of concern for a long time. But if they can take advantage of their offensive chances, there could be games where they're outshot 35-22, but still win 3-2. And that's probably how I envision this series going. If the Flyers are able to make it a long one and win it, they're going to probably win some games where they get outshot. So have that patience, don't get frustrated, and then take advantage of your opportunities. And then the third thing, if there is an advantage for the Flyers in this series, it's goaltending. Vladar has been just lights out pretty much all year. I mean, the game in which they clinch against the Penguins, he stole. He hasn't had to do that too much because the Flyers are also a very good defensive team. They don't give up that many shots normally. I think they might give up some shots to this team, but they don't normally give up a ton of shots. He's just had to be very solid, very good all year, and he has been remarkably consistent. In Game 6 against the Penguins, he was spectacular. And they might need a game like that from him in this series. At the other end, you have Freddie Anderson, who is their starter for now, a guy who just was ridiculously good in the first round against Ottawa, but he has a sketchy postseason history, and he has an injury history. So I think it's very important for the Flyers to get in his kitchen. Give him a little nudge here and there. Don't take a penalty if you can't, but get in his face, make it very difficult on him because there have been instances of him getting injured or going away in playoff series. He's very good when he's feeling comfortable, as he was against Ottawa. And Ottawa's a big, strong, physical team. I'm sure they took – I didn't see all that series, but I'm sure they took some runs at him. But you just have to make him uncomfortable. I think if you can do that, the Flyers might be able to win that goaltending battle, and that gives them a good chance too.
Yeah, and I like the advantage with this tonight. And I think game one is so important for the Flyers because they're coming off that emotional series against the Penguins. They've only had a few days off. I think that actually helps the Flyers where Carolina has not played in a week. And at first, Rick Tocchet was kind of said yesterday, what my first reaction was, I wish we had a few more days to get ready. But no, I want to stay in this rhythm and in this kind of mindset and this structure and to go right back at it. For Carolina, they haven't played in a week. You wonder, they're rested, but sometimes like you think about when you go on vacation, it takes a few days to kind of get back into work mode. And I wonder if it's going to have that effect on the Hurricanes where the Flyers are just clicking right now. And I think that could be a big advantage tonight.
Yeah, I think early on in the game, that's when that could show up. There could be some rust. It's been a while for them. The only thing is, as the series goes along, that rest is really good for Carolina because they play such a high-energy system. If they had gone 7 with Ottawa, Jeff, I would have been happier because you can – and they have in years past in the playoffs sometimes run out of gas a little bit playing that system. But now with all the time they've had off, I don't think they're going to run out of gas in this series. But, yes, there could be some rust in game one. Try to take advantage of that. Get your victory down there early in the series. And see where it goes. I see your point there. I've gone back and forth on that. I think short term it might help the Flyers with the rust factor, but long term it's good for Carolina because rested Carolina means they're going to have all their legs, and they need their legs to play their system effectively. So we'll see how it goes. The other thing about Carolina, they were not a balanced team in the first round. Their top line didn't score a ton. It was their second line with Stankoven that did most of the damage. They're going to need more depth. The Flyers have all of that. They only had 2 guys score more than 1 goal in that series against Pittsburgh. I believe it was 14 players scored, which leads the NHL. So the Flyers are getting goals from the defense better than any team in the NHL playoffs so far. So the Flyers have that balance. Carolina usually relies on that balance. Didn't really have it in round 1. So we'll see if they do in round 2.
This has been such a fun run for the Flyers. I imagine it's killing you that you're not doing these games now. And that last call was the Cam York overtime goal to win it and beat the Penguins. I imagine it's killing you because, you love the job. You want to be calling these games.
Yeah, I've said this for years. Hasn't been much of a factor, Jeff, over the last 10 years because the Flyers haven't made it to the second round that often. The only time they had in the last 14 years was the bubble. And the bubble was different in all regards.
Right, sure.
I mean, we were all separate. So I haven't really had to go through this since 2012 when things were normal. And even in 2012, we were still doing some second round games. So in reality, this is the first time that we've been actually locked out after the first round. And there are rumors that we will be not doing any playoff games in the near future, that the networks will take over from the get-go in the playoffs. So I treasure every playoff game I got. But yeah, it sucks. There's no two ways about it. I mean, you do the games all year long. You're involved. You're involved emotionally. You're involved in all the players' stories. They're getting, and after all these games, some of these games over the last 10 years where the Flyers were out of it, you're doing these games in March that mean nothing, and now they're there, and you're just sitting on the sidelines. It's not good. There's no way I can sugarcoat that. But the only thing I dislike about my job, everything else I love about my job, but and you wonder, hey, maybe alternate audio channels, maybe there's a way you can get the locals, because I can tell you.
Yeah, how about this idea, Jim? How about on like a YouTube? You do your own Jim Jackson channel in the playoffs, and you sit there and you call the game.
I could call it, but Saunders, you can't show it. Yeah, you can't show it. Yeah, you'll just see me. Right. I don't know if that works, but I will say this. When the networks are in the market with the locals, when both are being shown, not just Philly, all markets, the locals always get the heavier viewership. Fans want to see the guys they've been seeing all year long, but the networks pay big bucks, Jeff, for exclusivity. And money rules, so they pay for that exclusivity and they get it. And unfortunately, we're the victims of that. We don't get to call the games.
Well, Jim, we always love hearing you call Flyers games. You've done it for over 30 years. We're going to miss your voice during this playoff run. Hopefully it continues here as they get set for the second round of the playoffs beginning tonight in game 1, 8 o'clock, Flyers Hurricanes. Jim, we appreciate you joining us. Always great insight. Great to hear from you.
My pleasure, and I'm available. We can talk again, Jeff, because I don't have that much to do.
Let's do it. All right, Jim Jackson, legendary
care.
Flyers play-by-play man, joining us here on Bet Parx Saturday. He talked about some money there. Are the Flyers playing with house money? That is the big question. Rick Tocchet is using some of it as motivation to get his guys going. At this point, you don't need much motivation, but he was asked yesterday as they get set for this game 1, is this Philadelphia Flyers team, are they the underdogs? Is that the mentality that he takes? Here's what Rick Tocchet said.
I'm not going to lie. I told my players this at 11:40 when we found out. My mind went, oh, man, I wish we had 2 more days to prepare. But then I'm thinking, no, I want us to stay with the same routine. So that's what I want our players to have the same mindset is, this is great. Let's get right back at it because we want to stay in the routine. Yeah, as we talk about routine, so we've been in this routine for 2 months. It's a lot of work. You're most of the games we're metal, gas to, all the way, we're throttling in. So you're going to have some dips in your game because it's hard to play at that pace all the time. We're playing a team that plays that style of pace, and they have their ups and downs sometimes because of it. But saying that, I think the belief and the energy and stuff like that is easy to come back when you don't feel great. I felt that, we might have a bad period or a tough game, but the next game we usually bounce back. So that's because I think of this routine we've been going through the last 2 months. Flyers are a hockey town, and you see it. I know people, they love it. Hey, having Philly in the playoffs, Buffalo, and all that stuff. Yeah, that's great. So it really kind of gets the buzz back when you're relevant again a little bit. But it also adds more pressure, to raise the bar again, which I love. That's how you get better is with the pressure. So that's a good thing for us. I will have the odd snide comment to the guys, hey, these people don't believe in us. And you throw it in there. It's not like I don't say it every day. I mean, I get it. I mean, people believe in that. That's their job to predict. But no, it's not our mantra, like every day, like people don't believe in you. No. That's a slippery slope for me because I don't like the happy to be here. I've heard house money and all that stuff. I don't want to hear that. For me personally, even I tell the players, like, that's kind of like, I don't want to say built it, like, hey, if a team wins the series, they're better than you. But we're not going into it like, hey, we're just happy to be here. We're here to win the series, and you got to have that mindset. That's what I believe in. But I can understand other people saying it, house money and all that stuff. But I don't let my mind go there. You wouldn't be human if you didn't. Like, obviously, this is the way I think, and I try to explain to players. Like, you're always going to have your doubters. So you got to just, like, you're not trying to prove to the doubters. You're trying to prove to the people you're with that, hey, you're here to do your job. And that's really what it comes down. That's why in the room, it really matters. It doesn't matter about the outside. It's what's in the room, what you're doing for your team. It's no different than coaching. I'm not doing my best if I'm trying to coach to prove other people wrong. I'm coaching this team, and I can give them the best knowledge I can. That's the only way I'm going to get better, and the players are going to get better. So that's the way I look at it. But yeah, but it's good though. Like, it's good when people don't believe in you. I mean, yeah, it gives you a little bit of juice. Why not? Sure.
Yeah, Rick Tocchet, they don't need any juice tonight. Flyers are going to win game 1. That is my prediction. Now, here's a tough dilemma for Philly sports fans. You have the Flyers going at 8 o'clock, but you have the Sixers-Celtics game 7, 30 minutes prior at 7:30. Come on. Both games opposite each other. Are you kidding me? So this is a tough draw. So, look, obviously, Sixers-Celtics game 7, best 2 words in sports, game 7. This should be great tonight, and hopefully the Sixers don't put up a dud like we've seen in other games in this series, losing 2 by 32 points. But can they become the first team in franchise history to overcome a 3-1 series playoff hole? Let's check in on the Sixers. Let's get the very latest today with Sixers beat writer from the USA Today, Kai Carlin, joining us from Boston here on Bet Parx Saturday. Kai, how's it going? You got me, Kai?
I can't hear.
Let's see if we can get Kai. I think, Kai, it might be on your end. Can you check your mic, perhaps? Let's see. Let's see if we can get Kai Carlin going, talking about Sixers Celtics Game 7 tonight. A lot of history on the line, of course. This is such a great rivalry. Kai, do you got me? All right, he's going to sign back on and see if we can get him. But this Sixers team, I mean, look, when you think about this playoff series, they have never overcome a 3-1 series playoff hold. They're 0-18 in the playoffs when trailing 3-1, including 0-5 against the Boston Celtics. Now, this Celtics-Sixers team, they have really, really struggled against this Celtics squad. Remember, they have not beaten the Celtics in the playoffs since 1982. It was Dr. J and Larry Bird. You have to go way back, and you wonder if this is going to be the year. Let's check back in with Kai Carlin from Boston. Kai, do you have me?
Yeah, sorry, Jeff. I don't know why I couldn't hear you there. I apologize for that.
It's all good. So how excited do you think this group is? You cover this team day in and day out. You're on the road with the team in Boston, going into Game 7. What do you think they are feeling as we get set for game time at 7:30 tonight?
I think they're feeling confident. I think they're feeling excited. Shoot around this morning, there was a lot of good energy as the team really does get ready for what I think they win tonight. And I think
You
they win
do?
pretty.
Okay. Wow.
I think they win pretty easily. Look, I know Boston has their number. And I know that you just mentioned the stat that they haven't beaten the Celtics in a playoff series since 1982. That's 11 years before I was even born. So I mean, like that's pretty crazy. I think about it, Jeff. Ever since Joel Embiid has come back, the Celtics have zero answer for him. Listen, I think Neemias Queta, Nikola Vucevic, and Luka Garza are solid centers, but they can't guard Joel. And ever since he's come back, he's changed everything. I don't think Boston has an answer. I think the Sixers are confident, and I think they win pretty easily tonight.
That's interesting because I don't think the Sixers win. And as much as I would love to see them win, I just look at it like this. They're so inconsistent. And Tyrese Maxey talked about this the other day, that they're still kind of trying to figure this out on the fly, right? And after the Celtics have had really 2 bad games, and I know the Sixers have played tremendous the last 2 games, but when I look at this overall in the big picture, everyone has gotten their heart broken by the Sixers because just the consistency, whether Embiid's playing, he's not playing, you've had different groups. They really haven't had time to really play together and really know, in my opinion, how to close out these really tight games, especially in the playoffs, where you look at the Celtics and you go, okay, and I know Tatum is coming back, but he's been pretty good. But overall, this group has played together, the Celtics. And yeah, they have new pieces and things like that. But then you add the fact that they're in Boston, where it is extremely loud, one of the most hostile environments. And I just go, I'm not feeling it. And the consistency with Joel Embiid and everything else. And as far as they have come, I just think it's the end of the road tonight.
See, those are all fair thoughts, Jeff. But my thing is, at some point, you got to get the monkey off your back, right? At some point, the teams eventually get over that hump. And it really just feels like now this is it. They've already won twice in Boston in this series. They've already they've really dominated the last 2 games. Boston really didn't have a shot in either game. Well, I guess technically game 5 they led after 3, but then the Sixers kind of held them to 11 points in the fourth quarter. I look at it right now and I'm just like, the Celtics don't have an answer unless the Celtics hit 24 threes tonight, which obviously they're very capable of doing. I just don't see it. I don't see how the Celtics win tonight. Because they don't have an answer for Joel and Tyrese, and Paul George has been phenomenal in this entire series,
has.
Jeff. Yeah, Paul George has been phenomenal, and I just don't see how the Sixers lose tonight. Now, granted, it might be because I'm so confident that they might lose tonight, and then all of Philadelphia is going to be coming down on Kai Carlin. That I mean, whatever. But I am so confident in the Sixers winning tonight. And I'm never confident in this team, like, ever. So this is kind of like new for me.
Yeah, well, look, a Philly team has not won a Game 7 since the 2011 Flyers. It has been a tough run. And not to say that anything that's happened in the past is going to happen tonight. And obviously a key for the Sixers is really trying to stop Boston and that sharpshooting from three. And look, and I read this morning that in Boston's 3 wins, the Celtics have averaged 23s made and have shot nearly 42% from three. So look, and I know they've done a decent job at defending the three in the last 2 games, but I also look at it, the Celtics also too have had some good shots. They just have flat out missed. And so them going back to Boston, going, we can beat this team. And I get the sense from Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, hearing them, that they're not so thrilled the way they have played the last 2 games, and they're not going to go out like this. And I also say, in a 1-point game or a 2-point game in the final seconds, and you have one last shot for the Sixers, who's getting the ball? Like you don't, in my opinion, you don't have a killer on this team. And is Maxey the guy here? Is Paul George the guy here? Is Embiid? Like, who's the guy here that you're handing the ball to? They don't have this LeBron James or a Jimmy Butler or a Kevin Durant type that is just a stone cold killer. So who are you giving the ball to in crunch time when you need a game-winning bucket?
Probably Tyrese Maxey right now. They'll probably run some type of Tyrese and Joe pick and roll, and that always opens up a shot for either guy. And then, and then, at, and then at that point, that opens up an opportunity for others to follow up that pick and roll, whether it be Paul George open for a 3, VJ Edgecombe open for a 3, Kelly Oubre Jr. cutting baseline or anything like that. Kelly Oubre also, I feel like, deserves his flowers in this series. I know he hasn't shot the ball very well, but him and Paul George, that tandem on the perimeter, have done a really good job against both Tatum and Brown. And I know you just mentioned it, Jeff, and I think that's a good point. Tatum and Brown really haven't played all that great over the last couple of games, especially in Game 6. So you have to believe that they're going to come out. They are champions. They've been champs. They've got rings. So, I mean, they're probably going to come out with a lot of fight, heart, hustle. I just feel like the Sixers are just on a roll. Like, this is just a different, like, rhythm, a different focus I've seen from this group. And this is now my 9th year covering them. And I've never seen this team like this connected like this. So, yeah, I think they get it done.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because what I saw in Game 6, watching, I just said to myself, I don't remember seeing this group with Embiid show this much heart and fight. And I'm not saying it wasn't there, and I'm not accusing them of not fighting at other moments, but I just saw something else that I haven't seen from this team. Just that will to find a way. And obviously, they won that Game 6 easily, handedly, in control most of the way, but I just saw something different. My concern is I haven't seen that, that twitch, that look in their eye, and that determination and that fight consistently enough where it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. And look, maybe this is finally, for all the years and all the pain and the struggles of them not getting past the second round, getting past the Celtics here, which has been really a thorn in their side. Maybe this, to your point, is the year. What have you seen from Nick Nurse to be able to really just get the best out of them here? Because look, you lose 2 games in this series by 32 points. Not many are going to give you a chance here, but he has found a way to get the best out of them to put them in position now in a Game 7.
Yeah, I think Nick deserves a lot of credit for keeping the spirit high. I think that's a really big thing, because you just mentioned it. They got blown out by 32 points in Game 1, and it easily could have just been like, all right, I guess this is how this series is going to go. Instead, they rally, they win Game 2. They were right there in Game 3. If they could have just grabbed an defensive rebound down the stretch in Game 3, they would have won that one. Game 4, they get their doors blown off again by 32. And now here they are. They bounce back to win Game 5. They win Game 6. And now they're back here in Boston for a chance to, pull off a pretty miraculous comeback. And I think that comes down to Nick being able to be like, okay, listen, we're going to stop overhelping on drives. Because you mentioned the 3-pointers earlier. And yeah, when Boston's making their threes, they're tough to stop. But the Sixers have kind of stopped with the overhelping on the drives, because when you overhelp, obviously that leaves shooters open. They've stopped with that, allowed guys to guard their yard and play one-on-one, and trust that the defenders are going to get stops. And then offensively, they've been able to just run through Joel Embiid, and they've been getting a lot of great shots from Tyrese, VJ, and Paul. I feel like that's been a big factor in this series.
What do you think the key tonight is for the Sixers to win this game? Is there one? Is there two keys? What is your point you're going to hammer home as far as what it's going to take for the Sixers to win this Game 7 against the Celtics in Boston?
There were two things that come to my mind, Jeff, and I think that's 3 pointers. That because obviously you mentioned the big factor with them, and the rebounding. When Boston wins, like at least since the All Star break, they have been one of the better rebounding teams in the league. Even that game four, I think they won the rebounding battle 51-30. It was something insane like that. Sixers have been able to hold their own on the glass both game five and game six in order to get back into this series. And they've also been able to limit Boston's 3 pointers. That's something that is going to have to continue in game seven. I think it will. Like I said, I'm very confident that they win by double digits tonight. I think that they're on a roll. I think they're in a rhythm. So, yeah, as long as they continue to hit the glass and continue to limit Boston's 3 pointers, I think you're going to feel pretty comfortable walking out of here with a win tonight.
Yeah, and I have to ask you this before we let you go. Obviously, as you get set for Game 7, what would you define as a successful season for the Sixers? I mean, obviously, they've dealt with all sorts of stuff with Embiid and then Paul George and this and that, but they've had this group, and they have used up a lot of goodwill in this city with the fan base. It's been a really long time, obviously 25 years since they got past the second round, and we're still in the first round here. Let's not forget that. What, in your mind, would be a successful season with this group that has so much talent here?
I see that's tough because if you want to compare it to last year, this is already a success. You went from 24 wins to 45, and you're on the brink of winning a playoff series. Like even if they don't get it done tonight, right? Like let's say they lose in a close game, and you look at Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, you tip your cap to them, and you keep it pushing. Um, I think it's kind of a success right then and there, especially when you consider Paul getting suspended 25 games and Joel's appendectomy coming at the worst time. Honestly, the fact that Joel is even back right now is kind of a miracle when you consider the previous timelines of NBA players who have had appendectomies. But yeah, I feel like it's kind of already a success, but I'm also not a Sixers fan, so I don't know how the fans are really feeling about all of this. So we'll kind of see how
I'll
they
tell you.
how they
I'll
take
tell
it.
you. I would tell you that enough's enough. And unless they make a deep playoff run, that is not a successful season. And whether it's Embiid's fault or not, obviously not his fault with the appendix having to be removed. But the Paul George, there's always some sort of drama with this team that has built this group. And I would tell you, this is my thought, for whatever it's worth, it they have to make a deep run here. And I know, obviously, taking care of the Celtics tonight, it goes a long way, but it's still the first round. They have to make a deep run. They have to get past these teams and go, hey, listen, we should have been here before, but here we are, maybe when you don't expect it. But they have to make a run here to the Eastern Conference Final for me to
Well,
deem it successful.
well, like I said, I think they win tonight. Like
Okay.
I do think they win by double digits tonight, Jeff. I've never been more confident in the Sixers team. I think they win tonight. And then I would give them a pretty good shot to beat New York. Listen, I know the Knicks are the Knicks, but Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns are awful defenders, and I'm sure the Sixers are probably remembering 2024 as well.
Sure.
How close that was. So, like, if they get it done, I would kind of pencil them in ECF, not permanent marker,
Just
but
pencil, you can erase it. Erase it if I'm
yeah,
wrong. Yeah.
but I would definitely pencil them in for sure.
Well, look, Joel Embiid said he's tired of losing to the Celtics, and he didn't just say it. We really saw it in Game 6, and of course in Game 5. We really saw the Sixers just say enough is enough, and will that continue tonight? We will find out. Sixers Celtics Game 7 at 7:30. Kai Carlin, USA Today. We appreciate it. Does a great job covering the Sixers. Check out his stuff on Sixers Wire. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Kai Carlin joining us from Boston. Sixers 7.5-point underdogs tonight in Boston. Game 7. Does it get any better than that? And Sixers guard Kelly Oubre talking about the opportunity Saturday night in Boston, that we're a confident group. And just kind of like Kai said there, that they are confident that they can get the job done tonight in Game 7. And a lot of the Sixers talked about just the mentality and how they are feeling going into this game. And the Sixers Celtics, they certainly have this mentality going into Game 7, what it's going to be like. Obviously, both sides coming from different perspectives. The Sixers are confident right now. The Celtics go, We have to put an end to this Sixers confidence. Here's how the Sixers and Celtics say they are feeling going into Game 7 tonight.
I'm going to say this, it doesn't really matter that much, though, right? I mean, we've seen games like this is just one game that's one story, and you're going to go back and it's going to, it's just not going to flip a switch and happen again. I mean, we're going to have to really dig in and focus and prepare and get ready for adjustments. And I mean, we're going to have to give a tremendous effort. Again, I just think that the effort of getting back, guarding the ball, and blocking out needs to be at a tremendously high level. I think whichever team does that in this series wins, and that'll be the goal. I think, again, it's nice to win a couple in a row, and it's nice to play the way we did tonight, but it really does not matter. Each game's its own game.
We have a chance to accomplish something special. I mean, they're a great team. You look at everything they have. That's a super team, so we just got to go in there with the mindset we've had for the last, 2 games, last 2 wins, and, one play at a time. Tough environment, but we've been there. We won 2 games over there, so just keep doing what we've been doing.
Listen, I know what this team is made of. This team fights defensively, offensively. We share the ball. We try to get everybody involved, but defensively, I think we just fight and try to play hard. Just got to go out there with the right mindset. It's going to be a dogfight, most definitely. It's going to be fun. And, we just got to go out there and play as hard as we possibly can. That's it, man. Just go out there and leave it all out there on the floor.
Applaud the guys for, not quitting, I just think, in this moment, we stayed together. We stayed confident. We stayed poised. And just, we giving ourselves a chance here, being down 3-1 with a unbelievable opportunity to go play Game 7 in Boston. One of the historic and best, places to play for a Game 7. So, we're still alive. We're still fighting. We're still working. We're still staying together. And honestly, that's all, we can be happy and proud about as a group. That we are connected in these moments, and we're giving it our best shot.
It's fun to play winning basketball, and I think for me, obviously, the last couple of years have been tough. So just going through rehab and therapy, main thing that I've learned is trying to find the positive, enjoy the positive, win or lose. Enjoy the process. So I'm in a position where, I didn't know if I was going to be able to play, and I'm here playing. So just enjoying every moment. I think it's just about focusing on the positive and just going from there.
Are you tired? How is the toll of this series, and are you bummed that it's gone to 7? I mean, how are you feeling?
Bummed that it's going to 7? No, I mean. You can't wish for it to be over any sooner than it is going to be. I played 130 some odd playoff games, and bummed to say it's going to Game 7. No, I'm not bummed. I was out for 50 weeks. I wasn't able to play basketball, so I get another opportunity to play the game that I love. That I was, had to be sidelined for, 10.5 months. So obviously you want to win every game you play, but it doesn't always go like that. But more so just kind of thankful that we have another opportunity, right? We have another chance, and to make it right.
We got to break it. We got to, ain't nothing is going to be easy. Nothing's going to be given. We got to break it. Their comfort level is higher right now. Their confidence is high right now. They got a different swag to them, and we got to take that. They're not going to give us anything, so we got to be the team that throws the first punch, and that starts with me. I gotta come out with a great force. I gotta play smart. I gotta pick and choose my spots a little bit better, and try to find ways to open up stuff for our team.
Yeah, well, nobody has thrown more punches at the Philadelphia 76ers than the Boston Celtics, in particular of late. That Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And Tatum, obviously a sore subject around here because he could have been a Philadelphia 76er. Well, Sixers, Celtics, they have played more Game 7s than any other rivalry in NBA history. And again, the Sixers trying to beat this team in the playoffs for the first time since 1982, since Dr. J and Larry Bird. It has been forever. Enough is enough. As Joel Embiid said, I'm tired of losing to the Boston Celtics. Sixers, Celtics, Game 7 tonight at 7:30. And speaking of being tired of losing, Philadelphia Phillies, we got to talk about the Phils. They lose 10 straight games. Worst stretch in 27 years. They lose 11 of 12. They fire Rob Thompson. Is it Rob Thompson's fault? I don't think so. But you got to do something. And that's the only move you have in your back pocket is to fire the manager, just shake this whole thing up, send a wake-up call through that clubhouse, because what's been going on is just not acceptable. Not just this year, but remember, the history of it in the playoffs the last few years, just unacceptable. And, look, you're not going to get rid of Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber and Aaron Nola. You're just not going to get rid of 10 guys on this team that are making hundreds of millions of dollars. You got to get rid of Rob Thompson. And small sample size, but so far so good. Phillies have won 4 in a row, okay, since Don Mattingly. Donnie Baseball's taken over the Philadelphia Phillies on the interim basis. And tonight, they have a chance, later this afternoon at 4:10, they have a shot to win 5 straight games for the first time all season. And maybe this is just the spark they need. And I think Rob Thompson in that clubhouse is very well respected. Again, I don't think he's the reason the Phillies are in this mess. I really don't. It's on the players. Rob Thompson or any manager cannot go up there and hit for Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber in the playoffs. They just can't. So it's on this team. Whether this sends a wake-up call or not, we're going to find out, right? We're going to find out if Don Mattingly is enough to get this team going. Will it spark them? We're going to find out. And so a lot going on with the Phillies. So I caught up with Hall of Fame baseball writer Jason Stark from The Athletic, who, by the way, does not think Don Mattingly will be the Phillies' long-time manager. He believes that it's going to be somebody else. Plus, he says that, in his opinion, the Phillies in that clubhouse, those players are shell-shocked by this move to remove Rob Thompson. So here's my conversation with Jason Stark, the one and only Hall of Fame baseball writer. Take a listen. Hall of Fame baseball writer Jason Stark from The Athletic joining us. Jason, what's happening?
Hey, Jeff. It's been an interesting week in Philadelphia baseball, but I'm great. How are you?
It's been an interesting week across the board. You got the Sixers in Game 7,
Yeah.
the Flyers. I don't know. Everything seems like it's been flipped and turned upside down. But obviously you're here, and we want to talk about Phillies baseball. Obviously, I think there's a lot of shock going on in Philadelphia that the Phillies are in this situation. Are you surprised that the Phillies made this move? And is this the right move to replace Rob Thompson?
Well, there's a lot there. I think I'm like many people. I didn't see this coming. I didn't think they'd win 96 games again. I didn't think they'd be the worst team in baseball with the worst run differential in baseball, with a worse record than the Rockies, who got outscored by 400 runs last year. Who saw that coming? Right. And I think that was a big part of the conversation. And the firing of Alex Cora by the Red Sox was the real linchpin in this. I worked with Alex at ESPN, Jeff. I've known him a long time. I know how close he and Dave Dombrowski are, and they're closer than people in Philadelphia even know. So the moment that Alex Cora got fired, I thought to myself, Alex Cora is going to be the next manager of the Phillies. I'm just not sure if it's going to be next year or next week. Now, I think there was actually a time over the weekend when they thought that was going to happen, and he was almost literally going to go from manager of the Red Sox to manager of the Phillies over just a couple of days. He and his family then talked themselves out of that scenario, but I still think it's very likely that at some point you'll see him managing the Phillies. In the meantime, if you're going to turn to a plan B, I think people are going to see that while it may not have been Rob Thompson's fault, it clearly wasn't his fault. Don Mattingly is more than just Rob 2.0. He's got a certain aura about him because of who he is. He's Don freaking Mattingly. He was the king of New York baseball for a decade, and everybody in that clubhouse knows it. So he's got a certain aura about him.
Does this move, though, alone, can this spark, obviously, the Phillies turning this around? We saw what happened in 2022. The Phillies fired Joe Girardi, and it happened later in the season. It happened in June back then, and the Phillies go on this run to the World Series. Do you think this can spark a similar response here going forward with Don Mattingly?
Well, for the first 3 games, it did. We know
Yeah,
that.
sweeping the Giants and 2 walk-offs in one day. That doesn't happen every day.
It doesn't happen any day. Look, I think the Phillies still have many questions to answer. But when Joe Girardi got fired and Rob took over in 2022, they might have had more questions to answer. That was a team really playing bad for a longer period of time. And so I honestly don't know whether just changing managers flips a switch and changes everything. But I do think it will change enough that you're going to see what this team ought to be. I wrote this the other day. What they had to decide was, what year is this? Is this 2022 all over again, or is it 2012 all over again? So 2012 was the year, the last great generation of Phillies. That was the beginning of the end. Roy Halladay wasn't right. Ryan Howard was never going to be the same because of the Achilles. Chase Utley was hurt again. That was literally the beginning of the end for that group. And you saw the aging process turn them into something very different than they'd been for 5 years. So Dave had to look at this team and think, is that what I'm seeing? I think he cast his vote and said, no, this is like 2022. We're better than this. We're still good enough to contend, especially in a world in which 6 teams make the playoffs in our league. And does he know this is going to work? He doesn't. But I've heard Dave talk about this with previous changes. Even though he might not know what this is going to do, he wasn't prepared to sit back and just see if it was going to fix itself. He felt like he had to do something.
What does a managerial change do inside a clubhouse? I mean, obviously, this is a veteran group. You have stars across the board on this team, guys that are clearly capable of being a World Series contender. Do you think this does send a wake-up call? You've been in locker rooms for decades. What does it do when there's a managerial change, especially with a team that has this much talent?
Jeff, I was there Tuesday. I can't say I talked to everybody in that locker room, but I felt like the core players on that team were really shaken by what happened. All the winning that's taken place.
But it can't be a surprise. I mean, you lose 10.
I actually think you're right. I actually think it was an issue that they smelled it coming on that last road trip. And that's another reason that I think Dave maybe felt like he had to do it. But all the winning that's taken place here since 2022 has happened under Rob Thomson. He was good at his job. He cared about those guys. He loved those guys. They cared about him. They loved him back. They appreciated how he treated them and how he managed. And they got that guy fired. And I do think that gets the attention of a group like this. It certainly got Kyle Schwarber's attention. Talked to Trey Turner for quite a while after that first game. And there's no doubt it got his attention. Honestly, you never know over the long haul, but I do think that people jump to a conclusion I don't agree with, which is that because of temperament, Don Mattingly is just Rob Thomson 2.0. I don't agree. Not to go down the Nick Castellanos spikes in the dirt philosophy of managers, but Don Mattingly has a certain presence about him because of who he is and who he's represented in the sport. And players know this. Players know how great a player he was. And I think we've seen little examples already of attention to details that were I don't know if they're being overlooked, but they certainly weren't at the forefront for much of this year. And if Don Mattingly wants to pay a different level of attention to something, I think guys listen. Here's the other thing. Just the other day, he was talking about Brandon Marsh and talked about how going way back, even when he was Miami, they thought Brandon Marsh was going to be a star. And if you're Brandon Marsh and you hear Don Mattingly say, I've got star potential, I've got star talent, I think that means something to a player. If he said that about you, Jeff, what would you think?
He wouldn't. He wouldn't. He wouldn't. There's no star power here.
Okay, just saying.
Okay. So when you think about this whole situation and you say, okay, what is Don Mattingly going to do differently? Obviously, he comes as a former MVP and perennial all-star and perennial gold glover. He has managerial experience. He has that presence and that name. But what changes do you think we will see? I know the guy likes bunting. Surprisingly, he likes bunting, especially in this day and age. It seems like that is from, 3 decades ago. But are we going to see a lot more bunting? What other changes do you think we're going to see here with Don Mattingly?
Yeah, we've seen some subtle things so far. Rob gave those starting pitchers a lot of rope. And I think you could make a case that this year in particular, as things started to steamroll, even for the rotation, he gave them too much rope. All of a sudden, you see Don Mattingly heading out to the mound to go get Christopher Sanchez before he's even thrown 90 pitches. That gets everybody's attention. I think he took Jesus Luzardo out of the game before you would have expected.
Luzardo and Nola, they have not been good.
They have not been as good, no doubt. And maybe less is more. That's certainly the prevailing philosophy in the sport. He's out there every day with his glove, taking infield, taking throws at first base, talking to guys while wearing a glove. And they can see it's still in there, man. Don Mattingly still looks pretty freaking smooth over at first base. And I think that's a different kind of presence too. Bunting, like the fact that he's going to bunt a lot, we haven't seen that yet. I need to see it to believe it, but I do think this. It felt like the Phillies were incapable for the first month of the season of having a 1-run inning, didn't it? Like they'd score 3 or 4 or 5 in one inning, and then they'd never score again. And I think we've seen them show the ability to have a different kind of rally. The first game under Don Mattingly, they had 5 different run-scoring hits and a sacrifice fly in the same game, scored 7 runs, hit 0 homers. We haven't seen that style of baseball. I don't know if we can connect the dots yet, but I think we can. One other thing, Jeff, track record. Don was sitting in the dugout the other day, and I said to him, I know nobody needs to tell you how long a baseball season is. So you tell me, is there a season from your past that you can draw on where your team got off to a rough start and then it turned out fine? And he said, go check my record with the Dodgers for a couple of those years. So you know me well, I did that. Here's what I found. 2013, 2014. First year in June, 9.5 games out of first place, 10 games under. Next year in June, 10 games out of first place. You know where they finished both those years? In first place. One year by 11 games. And I thought I have to find out how rare this is. Has anybody ever done that? So went and looked. Turns out only one manager in the history of baseball has had back-to-back seasons where his team was at least 9.5 games out of first place and finished first both years, 2 years in a row. He's the only guy who ever did that. And so it's so crazy that you drop him in almost the exact same situation here. I don't even think the Phillies knew that stat.
Yeah, but and look, to be fair, it doesn't mean it's going to happen again. And you're playing, of course, you're playing with fire here. And you think about some of the changes and some of the differences between Topper and now Don Mattingly. And look, they come from the same kind of cloth. They are very similar, I feel like, baseball guys. At the same time, obviously, Mattingly has the track record as a player. One of the things I would like to see, and maybe you could explain this because I just don't get it. My really only issue with Rob Thompson was lineup construction. And I've said this before, and maybe you can clear the air, but why Kyle Schwarber is not the cleanup hitter, I don't understand. I just don't understand the lineup construction where you have your best power hitter batting second, but not fourth, and then it leaves you vulnerable in that fourth spot? I don't understand.
Well, the fourth spot's a huge issue. Huge. Just out of curiosity, where would you hit? Who would you hit 1, 2, 3? In what
So I would
order?
go Turner. And I understand early in the season, I do not put Crawford there because there's pressure in that 2-hole, but maybe you put Crawford there now. But I would tell you there are about 3 to 4 other guys I would put 2 because you do have that issue in the cleanup spot. So I understand Stott's off to a bad start. I understand, you could put Marsh in there, on the days that he's going. You need some sort of spark in that 2-hole, but to have Schwarber there and then to have Harper 3, it then leaves you in this giant hole at 4. And I feel as if that it hurts Bryce Harper in a lot of ways to have someone like Alec Boehm or Garcia or even Real Muto in that 4 spot and not having someone like Schwarber. I feel like Harper would get better pitches to hit if he was having someone behind him that was, somebody that was feared among pitchers.
All right. You could also look at it this way. The game Thursday where Cal Schwarber ties that game with 2 outs in 9th inning, 2 outs and 2 strikes in the 9th inning. And I think there was a lot of reasons to ask, why would they ever pitch to him in that spot with first base opening? And don't you think part of that answer is, well, look who's on deck. Bryce is on deck. You want to pitch in a Schwarber too. And, especially because he's a more disciplined hitter right now than Bryce is at this particular stage of his career. And if you had nobody of consequence hitting behind Schwarber, I think he'd walk more than you want him to walk. He's leading the league in homers again right now, doing it this way. So there's all of that. And the other thing that Donnie talked about the other day when this came up is the modern research, the modern knowledge on this topic, which is that it makes less difference than you think. We can quibble about this. I do think that protection is a real thing. A lot of modern baseball front office people think the opposite. I don't know. I do think it's a thing, but the thing that is most important about lineup construction is getting your best hitters to the plate as much as possible. And that means hitting Turner, Schwarber, Harper, 1, 2, 3 in some order. Having said that, I obviously agree with you. The 4-hole is literally that. It's been a black hole now for a couple of years that they have to figure out. And probably that means figuring it out at the deadline. This team is so obviously a right-handed bat short.
Yeah, and so, look, if it's not Schwarber, and look, I would go Garcia or Real Muto over Boehm any day of the week, right? And so Boehm is just not that guy. And so you need somebody feared. And I know they brought in Garcia thinking that they can tweak with his swing and things like that and get him back to that ALCS MVP he was a few years ago. It just hasn't happened, as quickly. But when I do look at this, that has really been my big issue. And, to hear Dombrowski the other day say, well, we really don't have a cleanup hitter. To me, I'm like, hey, I'm staring at him. Now, look, Those guys know way more about baseball than I ever will. And yes, to your point, maybe you put Schwarber in that 4 spot and it's still all the same, right? And you're still in the same boat and it doesn't work. And let's say you put Crawford in the 2-hole then, and that creates issues for Crawford. And, you want to take as much pressure off the rookie as you can right now. And he's playing really well. So I do understand the pros and the cons of each side. But I'm just looking at this situation and just going, there's a massive hole here. I see a better solution than having Schwarber in that 2-hole, even though the 2-hole comes up way more than the 4 spot.
Yeah. The whole set lineup concept is another one we could talk about and debate. I watched the Rays with Kevin Cash, their manager. They mix and match every game. Like he could go 162 games and never repeat the same lineup. Does it all the time.
But I feel I feel like veterans though, veterans like to know where they're hitting. They're in
that's
there.
the way Don Mattingly's going to think too. You can debate it, but just look at modern bullpens and how you see teams that they've had 7 pitchers get a save already, for example, and we're
Right.
seeing so many of this the philosophies that you and I thought were etched in stone, were handed down to Moses on a concrete slab once upon a time, all be rethought, rewritten, redone, reworked. So many concepts that we think make sense. The deep thinkers in baseball actually think make less sense than ever. So what the heck? What do we know?
Yeah, and so last few here for Jason Stark, the Hall of Fame writer from The Athletic. Do you think Don Mattingly was brought in here originally during the offseason as an insurance policy in case this situation did pop up? Now, he said, and this has come up too, that he said when he came here that he doesn't want to manage again. He doesn't think he wants to be a manager again. Now, it came out the other day that he said that because he, really didn't want to hurt Rob Thompson's feelings and create an uncomfortable situation. But do you believe that he was brought in here initially because if this happens and we get off to a bad start and we have to make a move at a manager situation, we have a guy in Don Mattingly?
Yeah, I do not. I do think they wanted more presence and more experience in that role. No disrespect to Mike Calitri, but Don Mattingly's done all kinds of stuff that Mike Calitri's never done. He was a Hall of Fame caliber player, and he was a manager of the year in the major leagues and worked in New York and LA and Miami and has been there, done this. And so I do think they wanted that presence in that job. But, Donnie went into Toronto and told John Schneider the same thing. I'm not here as a threat to your job. And that's really what he intended to say to Rob. It might have come out a little different. I know people are picking on the part that he doesn't have the energy to do it. It's just something he said to get us off that trail.
Right.
But when the Phillies began contemplating this move, and I think it honestly was being talked about internally at least a week before it actually happened, my sense is they didn't know who the next manager was going to be. Alex Cora was still in Boston then, and they hadn't really settled on this. There is the whole aspect of it that the general manager happens to be a guy named Preston Mattingly, and you don't often see a general manager and a manager who are father and son. In fact, we've never seen it in the history of baseball. Because Don Mattingly is the manager and Dave Dombrowski really makes all the decisions. That's not, in practice, a serious issue. On the other hand, I do think it's something that they thought about and kicked around before they went down this road.
Yeah, and you talked about Alex Cora when we initially spoke and we initially started this conversation. Is there a scenario where you see, Don Mattingly does such a great job that it's not Alex Cora next year and it is Don Mattingly as the manager full-time of this Philadelphia Phillies team?
I don't think Don even took the job with the idea that he was going to be the manager next year. He might not even be coaching here next year. I think his sense is, you want me to do it? I'll do it. I'll do it for this year. If he goes 60-20, who knows what's going to happen, Jeff? But I think in everybody's mind, this idea that Alex Cora was Dave's first choice and is still probably his first choice, I think that's hovering now over everyone and everything. And Alex Cora, if he wants to manage again next year, he'll have a lot of teams looking to hire him. But again, I know how close that he and Dave are, and it's different than just saying, well, he worked for this guy and they get along. Alex Cora isn't the manager in Boston because he had a disconnect with ownership. He had a disconnect with the front office. If he came to Philadelphia, it would be exactly the opposite. He's won a World Series with this president of baseball ops, and John Middleton is the opposite of John Henry. I don't know that there's unlimited funds, but there's unlimited commitment to trying to win, which is not what's going on in Boston now. Alex Cora and Kyle Schwarber have a deep connection. It's another thing to watch. There are just so many arrows pointing toward that happening. That's what I think is likely to happen. I'd be really surprised if he's not the manager of the Phillies next year. But
Yeah,
I'll go
it's
back to
interesting because you could do whatever you want. You could have a Hall of Fame manager. You could bring Tony La Russa out of retirement. Anyone you want. It's not going to make Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, just turn it on in the postseason. Like, they can't force those stars that you're paying $300 million to all of a sudden produce. I don't care who the manager is.
That's totally true. Who can argue with that? They've got to do it in October. They've got to be better than all of them have to be better than they were the first 5 weeks of this year. That was embarrassing. It was shocking. And that's on everybody. It's on the manager. It's on the coaching staff. It's on all of them. That said, I wrote a piece this spring that looked at this whole idea of running it back. And I think the jury is out on running it back. For one thing, the Yankees also ran it back, and they're the best team in the American League. The Mets blew it up instead of running it back, and they're a mess. And the history is filled with examples of teams where you thought, well, that team can't win. They've shown they can't win. And then what happens? They win. Trey Turner's Washington Nationals were one of those teams until they won the World Series in 2019. Mike Schmidt, Greg Lazinski, Larry Boa, Steve Carlton, that generation of Phillies, people thought the same thing about them, and they got bumped in the first round, 76, 77, 78. They couldn't win the big one until they did. So here's my thing. People feel like they've seen this movie. They know how it's going to end. Nobody knows how it's going to end. You never know. It's baseball.
Let's end with this. Jason, you do a great podcast with former Philly Doug Glanville. Tell everyone out there about the podcast, where they can find it, what it's called, and some of the great interviews and stories that you guys have told over the years.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Doug and we met when he was still playing for the Phillies. We've had a fun relationship ever since. Worked together at ESPN, and we've been doing this podcast now. Let's see, this is year 7, I want to say, which is incredible. And it's called Starkville. You can find it now on the Rates and Barrels podcast feed or on the Rates and Barrels YouTube channel. That's basically the athletic channel. We have great guests. We had week 1 this year. We had Aaron Boone, and Jeff, this is how much fun our show is. Aaron Boone introduced the lineup of the 1980 Phillies in the voice of Dan Baker. And if you close your eyes, you wouldn't know which is which. So,
wow, and I know he's a huge Philly sports fan. Growing up here with his dad, so he loved, big Eagles fan and things like that. And of course, Dan Baker is iconic. That's pretty incredible.
Yes, so check it out. We had Walt Weiss from the Braves last week. Ron Darling is our guest coming up this week. It'll drop Saturday, and it's always fun. Lots of fun conversation and fun stuff on Starkville. So
I love the
name.
name.
Giving me a chance to mention that.
Doug Glanville, Jason Starkville. I love it.
Yeah, well, guess where the name came from? Stark Glanville. What do you think?
Yeah.
Pretty good, right? Catchy?
Yeah, that wrote itself, right?
It works
All
for
right,
us.
Jason Stark, Hall of Fame baseball writer from The Athletic. We appreciate you joining us. Keep up the great work.
Jeff, great to talk to you again. Thank you.
So great conversation there with the Hall of Fame baseball writer Jason Stark about the Phillies and the future of the Phillies. Can this spark them? Don Mattingly, he's done it before, and this could only help. JT Realmuto, it's just in. He has been reinstated from the injury list, so he is back tonight for the Phillies as they take on the Marlins in Miami. Of course, today it is Kentucky Derby Day, and a Kentucky Derby party is going on right here at Parx Casino in Ben Salem, exit 6 off the Jersey Turnpike, right next to Parx Casino. Check it out. Of course, big racing day, the biggest in all of horse racing, a great day of free family fun, plus live thoroughbred horse racing all day long. You can watch the Kentucky Derby on the Jumbotron screen at the racetrack, infield at Parx Racing. Gates opened at 10 a.m. this morning. First live race started at 12:40. It's going to go on all day. Catch all the excitement of the Derby at Parx Racing with the free family fun from 12 noon to 5 p.m. in the Picnic Grove. There will be moon bounces, pony rides, face painters, food trucks, and more. Again, it is all free. Live music by Ear Candy starting at 1 o'clock, plus food, drink specials, souvenir merchandise, and much more. ParxRacing.com. For details, you can check out the website. It's a Kentucky Derby party today at Parx Racing in Ben Salem, exit 6 off the Jersey Turnpike, right next to Parx Casino. Of course, you must be 18 to wager at Parx Casino and 21 to gamble at ParxCasino.com. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, speaking of the Kentucky Derby, the 152nd running of the Derby, post time at 6:57. There's nobody better to talk to than Dick Girardi, joining us here on Bet Parx Saturday, live from the Sportsbook at Parx Casino. What's happening, Dick?
Jeff, how are you, buddy?
Doing great. So obviously a big race day, and obviously the odds are changing left and right. So Puma this morning, among the favorites, now the fourth horse to be scratched. He had 8-1 odds. What's going on here, Dick? Everyone's just left and right, just bailing out here.
Yeah, this is kind of unusual. Some kind of an issue came up with the horse this morning, the Puma, and the trainer just didn't feel comfortable running him. That does happen. These are animals, but yeah, this one's a little unusual. I don't remember the last time I saw 4 scratches from the original 20. Now, 3 horses drew in from the also eligible list. There were 4 on that list, so we'll run 19 instead of 20. So it'll still be essentially a full starting gate. There'll be the stall on the furthest outside will be empty, Jeff. But yeah, we'll have 19. But yeah, the Puma was a major contender. Of the horses that have scratched, he was the one that had the best chance of winning for sure.
So what is the domino effect here when you talk about the different odds and things like that?
Right.
The domino effect here over the last few days has to be just all over the place, and especially this morning when you get news about Puma.
Right, so it's going to bring down the odds on all of the major contenders, right? If maybe a horse was going to be 5-1, now he's 4-1, something like that, because of all the money that the Puma had bet on him, that's out. That just disappears from the pool. And anybody that bet on the Puma to win, they'll get their money back. But yeah, so yeah, it's definitely going to change the odds. The good news is there's so much money still to be bet. I mean, this is the biggest pool of the year in North America by like light years. There'll be several $100 million bet on this race by the time it's over. So it'll shake itself out over time.
Yeah, obviously right now it appears that Renegade has the best odds at 5-1 from that number 1 post position. What do we know about Renegade?
Won the Arkansas Derby, owned by Mike Rapoli, the vitamin water guy who's made an absolute fortune. Mike from Queens, St. John's grad. He's the guy that funds Rick Pitino's basketball program. He loves St. John's hoops. He loves his horses. He's won some really big races. In fact, Jeff, he's won 2 races already on the card at Churchill Downs today with undercard races. So, yeah, Renegade's legit. He's an absolute contender. You know, there's several others. Commandment, the Florida Derby winner, certainly contender. Further Ado, the Bluegrass Stakes winner. They're probably your top 3 names now that the Puma is out. But there are others that certainly could win, but they're the 3 most likely winners of the race.
Who do you like in this Derby?
I like the 7, Danon Bourbon. This is a horse who's 3 for 3. All of his races, Jeff, have been in Japan. You're saying, wait a second, what's going on with Japan? How can they win? Well, the Japanese are very, very serious about horse racing. In fact, you could make a case that their 2 biggest sports over there are horse racing and baseball. And I don't know which is bigger. And they started to get serious about international racing maybe like 15 or 20 years ago. They've always loved to gamble on the sport. And now their horses are starting to win around the world. 2 years ago, probably the best horse, certainly a dirt horse ever to come out of Japan was Forever Young. He lost the Derby by 2 noses, and he was absolutely the best horse in the race. And he's gone on to win over 30 million worldwide since then, 2 years later. I think Danon Bourbon has that kind of potential. When you watch the videos of his races, he just kind of stands out. Now it's going to be a completely different situation, right? He runs in Japan. The trainer's never been here. The jockey's not been here. So that part's a little concerning, but man, this horse has a lot of talent. And the last I looked, he was 14-1. That's the thing I like the most. I love 14-1.
I have to ask, and maybe this is a dumb question, but how do you get a horse from Japan to the United States to Louisville, Kentucky?
So he flew originally to Chicago. I assume probably from Tokyo. I don't know exactly where they would have stood.
First
But yeah,
class or business or class or?
horse. They have planes that are strictly for horses. It's
I
almost
did not know that. And sorry if that's a dumb question. I did not know
yeah,
that.
no, it's okay. It's almost like the stalls. They actually the stalls that they would inhabit at home. The stalls are very similar on the plane, and they'll have the handlers that are normally with them. They'll be with them, and they typically they'll give the horse a tranquilizer to keep the horse calm the whole time. But yeah, they actually most of them are fine traveling, and this obviously that's not a short flight. That's not a commuter flight. So, but yeah, most of the times these horses seem to adapt pretty well to it.
I did not know. That's pretty interesting. So, obviously, we are steps away from Smarty Jones' way here at Parx Casino. That incredible, of course, story. Nearly wins a Triple Crown in 2004. Is there a horse out there in this field that you think could be the next Triple Crown winner, or could give us that great story like we saw with Smarty Jones 22 years ago?
Yeah, I don't see it coming into the race, Jeff. But the fun thing about the Derby is a lot of times you don't know what the story is until the horse that actually wins the race, right? And then you go, "Oh, I missed the story coming in." But yeah, there's no horse like Smarty Jones. Certainly with not the local connections we have here in Philly. And he was a once in several generations talent. There's no horse in this race with that kind of talent. I mean, Smarty Jones was one of one.
Yeah, and the other thing I think is interesting is with these Philadelphia connections, former Philly star Jason Worth, he's emerged as among a top player in the horse racing business. He won the Belmont Stakes. His horse won the Belmont Stakes 2 years ago. His backstory is interesting. I mean, the way he's emerged kind of in the sport. How would you say, how big of a player, to put in perspective, is Jason Worth in the horse racing business?
Yeah, I think he's a big player. I think he's getting bigger. Look, he couldn't have hit it any better, right? The first horse he gets involved with, Dernick, ends up winning the Belmont Stakes and the Haskell up at Monmouth Park on the North Jersey shore. So, yeah, the timing was right. I know he's formed a lot of syndicates. He has a lot of people who are investing with him. And it's great. You can tell how much he loves it. Because look, a lot of this, Jeff. We all cover sports. When these athletes retire, they're looking for action, right? I mean, they had action every day. That's what the racetrack is. It gives them action. And when you're the owner and you win a race and you're in the winner's circle, you feel very much like, and Jason said this, like you just won the World Series, which he obviously did with the Phillies in 08.
Yeah, and obviously, what he's done, and he's learning, and obviously you have the Bob Bafferts of the world and people that have been doing it forever. How tough is that for a Jason Worth or anybody else? I mean, I remember years ago covering these 6 or 7 just childhood friends who bought this horse Funny Side for a few $1,000, and they all went on and it almost won the Triple Crown, but lost at the Belmont Stakes in Elmont, New York. But how difficult is it for someone like Jason Worth or somebody else to come out of nowhere and emerge themselves as among a top player in the horse racing business?
Yeah, it's difficult, Jeff, because you're buying these horses, these young horses especially, you're buying them on pedigree, you're buying them on looks, but you really don't know what's going to happen when they get on the racetrack. Everybody that says they know for sure is making it up. I call them 1,000-pound lottery tickets. And the difference is with a lottery ticket, once you buy the lottery ticket, there's no more expense. But you got to feed these horses. And that's not inexpensive. You got to hire a trainer. You got to pay them. So it's not an inexpensive sport. So it's great for a guy like Jason. And obviously, Jason can afford it. He made a lot of money in baseball. He can even afford to lose. But you better.
But you can lose. But you could lose a lot of money in horse racing.
100%.
Right? Because that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the people that are playing it at the highest levels are, for the most part, people that are doing it. I don't want to say it as a hobby, but people that could afford to lose it. Yeah, if you have a regular job or you're a 9-to-5 job, it's harder to invest in the game just because of the continuing expenses. But you might just want the thrill of it, and like I can guarantee you, anytime you're in a winner's circle, whatever you invested, you feel like it was worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously with tonight being the Derby night, 6:57 post time in Louisville, Kentucky. There's a lot going on here at Parx Casino here in Ben Salem. I'm not sure if you're going to be over here today at any point or where you're watching the race from. But can you talk about just everything kind of going on here at Parx? I mentioned it going into this interview, but can you talk about just some of the fun that's going to be happening here at Parx Casino?
Sure. I mean, the track is open today. Normally, Jeff, they're not open on Saturdays, but they do open on several Saturdays during the year, during the Triple Crown races, obviously the Pennsylvania Derby that will come up in September 19th. So maybe open a half a dozen Saturdays. Normally, it's just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So, yeah, it's one of the biggest days of the year at Parx, at the racetrack, because everybody's into horse racing today, the first Saturday in May. So they got games over there. They got bounce things. They got paint, face painters, all that kind of stuff. And it's the great part about the racetrack, it's just like the casino. It's free. It costs nothing to get in. You just walk in. You can go out to the picnic grove, bring a picnic, bring some burgers, cook. They got a bunch of charcoal pits out there. So, yeah, no, it's a fun day, and it's one of the two most popular days of the year at Parx are PA Derby Day and Kentucky Derby Day.
So any advice on how to bet tonight?
I like the 7, Danon Bourbon, the Japanese horse we were talking about.
You're saying about that, but how would you? Would you do
I
a
would bet him
trifecta? Like, how would you?
Yeah, I would bet him to win at 13 or 14 to 1. That's definitely worth a win bet. And also like an exact of 7, 18. 18 is further ado. So if you play an exacta box 7, 18, 18, 7, that's going to pay something too. Those are the two horses I like the most. There's probably maybe a half a dozen horses that if you say one of them won, you go, okay, I get that. And then the other like 11, you go, how did 11 or 12, how did that happen? But it's a pretty evenly matched field. I just think my horse, the 7, is the one. It's a bit of a mystery to most people, and the price is better than you're going to get on the top American horses.
This is quite the sports Saturday. We were talking about this when we came on the air
Yes, it
at
is.
noon. You have Eagles rookie camp, Phillies Marlins at 4:10, Kentucky Derby at 6:57. The Union are taking on Nashville at 7:30. You have Sixers Celtics game 7 at 7:30, and then the Flyers Hurricanes game 1 of the second round at 8 o'clock. How in the world can you watch all this? And by the way, I mean, I'm annoyed that at the very least, that the Sixers and Celtics game is opposite the Flyers Hurricanes game. I don't like it. I want to focus really on one thing, especially when you have two playoff teams going on. Now, you can watch the Derby on its own, but Sixers Celtics, Flyers Hurricanes, that's problematic for me.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jeff. I mean, there's one game in the NBA, one game in the NHL, and they put them up against each other when one city is represented in both games. I mean, I understand why NBC did what they did. They have a lead in from the Derby, right? I mean, the Sixers Celtics number is going to be gigantic because the Derby's a huge hit on NBC. They'll have 20 million viewers, and they're all going to stay for the basketball game, and then more are going to come in, obviously. But yeah, why couldn't the Flyers game either have been tomorrow or like at 3 o'clock? But yeah, the idea that ABC had to put it on opposite, it's going to hurt the viewership nationwide for sure, because more people are obviously going to tune in. Basketball is more popular than hockey anyway. More people are going to tune into Game 7, and that's true here in the city, right? You're going to be more interested in the Sixers Game 7 than the Flyers Game 1. So yeah, why ABC did that? Maybe there could be an answer without talking to one of their executives. I don't know, but I wish it, like you, it just feels wrong that we're having.
And look, I'm speculating on this, but I would think that the Hurricanes in the NHL perhaps did not want the Hurricanes, who haven't played since last Saturday, having to sit yet another day. But to your point, 3 o'clock, you're then really out of the way of the Derby. You're really out of the way of the Derby. But I hear you. And then at the same time, you want them in prime time as well. But again, if you have your fan base split up, and look, nowadays you can do the split screen thing, but I just want to, especially at Game 7, I really want to focus on one thing.
Yeah, Jeff, it would be one thing if you had hockey versus basketball and there wasn't a team from the same city in both. That's fine.
Right.
Hockey people can watch what they want to watch, basketball people. But the idea that, out of 3 teams, 2 of them are from the same city. I mean, really? 4 teams? What are we doing? It's unfortunate.
I hear you. In any event, it is going to be hopefully a super Saturday for Philly sports fans. Maybe everybody could sweep. We get wins across the board. We will see. We've seen some dark days around this city, but hopefully today is not one of them. Well, Dick Girardi, we appreciate you joining us. Great insight about, obviously, the 152nd running of the Kentucky Derby post time coming up at 6:57. We appreciate you joining us on Bet Parx Saturday.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Jeff.
All right, Dick Girardi right there. Of course, as we mentioned, it's Kentucky Derby Party Day today at Parx Racing in Bensalem. Exit 6 off the New Jersey Turnpike, right next to Parx Casino. A great day of free family fun, plus live thoroughbred horse racing all day long. You can watch the Derby on the Jumbotron screen at the racetrack infield at Parx Racing. Gates opened at 10 a.m. today. The first live race started at 12:40. Catch all the excitement of the Derby at Parx Racing with free family fun from noon today until 5 o'clock in the Picnic Grove. There's moon bounces, pony rides, face painters, food trucks, and much more. Again, it is all free. Live music by Ear Candy starting at 1 o'clock, plus food, drink specials, souvenir merchandise, and much more. ParxRacing.com for details. It's Kentucky Derby Party Day today at Parx Racing, Bensalem. Exit 6 off the Jersey Turnpike, right next to Parx Casino. You must be 18 to wager at Parx Racing, 21 to gamble at ParxCasino.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So we have talked a lot about this Sixers Game 7. Who's going to win this game? Is it going to be the Sixers? Is it going to be the Celtics? We've talked about, obviously, the Phillies. Having Jason Stark really go in depth on what is going on with the Phillies and really the notion that the players, even though maybe they felt that this was coming, they're a little shell-shocked. They're in the situation. Rob Thompson gets fired. And then now you have the Eagles. And, I know it's early with the Eagles, and they're coming off the draft from a week ago. They have rookie camp out there. Obviously, this is the first opportunity to bring in the rookies. Of course, you have the receiver, Mekhi Lemon from USC, getting their first look at them. They're really just – this is kind of the onboarding process of getting these rookies comfortable. And it's also an opportunity for Sean Mannion, the new offensive coordinator, to get with these guys and really for Nick Sirianni to see what it's like for Sean Mannion to really teach these guys, get them comfortable, to learn from the new offensive coordinator. And a lot of the veterans have been around. Nick Sirianni's talked about how guys are hungry, Jalen Hurts and company, after everything that happened last year. And you do wonder, with rookie camp going on, which rookies are going to emerge this year as potential foundation pieces. And I hate to grade the draft that happened just a week ago. That's so unfair. But it is a key offseason for the Eagles. That big disappointment last year. You've switched things around, not just with the new offensive coordinator, but really with a whole new system. But by all accounts, Sean Mannion is off to a great start behind the scenes, and this football team is hungry. Here's Nick Sirianni talking about what he has seen so far from Sean Mannion, the new offensive coordinator, and the veterans who have been around the building as they look to rebound from a disappointing season from a year ago.
You do your homework, you go through the process, and then you get to see these things before even the players get in here, right, with the way they present in front of the coaching staff and with me. I think he's just got a good calm confidence, conviction about the way he goes about it, very detailed. And it's been fun. It's been fun sitting in the back of the room, listening to him talk, listening to him install and building the connection with the guys. And he's done a good job so far, and just got to keep stacking days upon days. Yeah, they're hungry. They're hungry, and they're hungry to be back here. They're hungry to continue to connect with each other, connect with their new teammates. I've really seen them spend a lot of time together, knowing how important this phase of the offseason is to be able to come together as a team. Like sometimes in the season, you don't have these opportunities that you work for. You work till midday, and then you got a long portion of the day to be able to do some things with your teammates. And I've really seen them, really working hard at that, because we know how important that piece is for our football team, to come together as a football team. And they're working really hard at that. They're working really hard in the weight room. I wouldn't say I notice a different level of conditioning of this. It's again, everything starts right back at the beginning, and we're building it as if, that we're starting from square one again, not only in the schemes, not only, a new scheme with offense, a similar scheme, the same scheme in defense, same scheme in special teams, same thing with our strength and conditioning, same thing with our core values, same thing with our relationships.
So the Eagles in some ways are starting fresh, starting over. Don't want to rush to judgments or excitement over Sean Mannion. We really don't know what we're going to get. we really don't know how this Eagles team is going to respond to the pressure of coming up short from a year ago and how all these new pieces are going to fit in. And, this is not a city that has patience, nor should you at this point, but I hate to say and use this word, but you got to trust the process. I mean, Howie Roseman and the Eagles have built that trust up within the fan base. That's certainly true. And I got to say that this football team, I do think will get it right. This offense will get going. All of it, of course, on the shoulders, in my opinion, of Jalen Hurts. Will he have A.J. Brown? Will he not have A.J. Brown? What's this receivers group going to look like? Is the offensive line going to be healthy? There's a lot of question marks going into the season, but certainly the Eagles should be elite. And you talk about being elite, this Phillies team should be elite. And I still think this Phillies team wins 90 games. As Jason Stark mentioned, in the last hour about other teams have been through this, and they've been managed by Don Mattingly when he was with the Dodgers that have overcome a hole like this, but not the start you needed, not the start you want. But again, it is only May 2nd. A ton of time for the Phillies to figure this out. And look, Rob Thompson, he takes the fall. I would tell you, not his fault, right? Did the Phillies make the right move in firing Rob Thompson? Absolutely. He had to go. You had no other choice, but Rob Thompson's a great baseball guy. And I know some Phillies fans out there wanted that Larry Boa mentality to shake up the locker room and wanted that yeller and screamer. You just don't see that anymore. You just don't see it in professional sports, let alone in baseball. The Lou Piniella days and the Larry Boa days, they're over. You don't see it. The athletes are different. Rob Thompson was even keel. And look, the Phillies, they needed a shakeup. And I'll tell you, Don Mattingly, I think, is a great choice. I would say that I think that Don Mattingly was brought in here as an insurance policy, as they mentioned to Jason Stark. That is my theory, that the Phillies said we need more experience here. And if things go south quickly this season after the disappointments the last few years in the playoffs, who are we going to go to? Now, they were going to pass on Don Mattingly, and they were going to go to Alex Cora, who said no. And could Alex Cora be the manager to the start of next season? Maybe. We'll see what happens here. Maybe Mattingly will be just what they need and will get this team in the playoffs and make a deep World Series run. It happened. It happened in 2022. They get rid of Joe Girardi. They bring in they promote Rob Thompson, and he wins, 8 straight games and takes them to the World Series. And look, I think a manager, yes, you have to push all the right buttons and things like that, but it's up to the players. And Rob Thompson's not going to help Bryce Harper hit at the plate. He's just not. He's not going to help Kyle Schwarber and Trey Turner. Those guys are proven players making hundreds of millions of dollars. It's on them. But Rob Thompson, he's the fall guy here. Fair or not, it's the tough, cutthroat business of professional sports. Thompson has a standing offer to return to the Phillies as a consultant and a special assistant and things like that. Something Charlie Manuel did years after he was let go. And we'll see if Rob Thompson comes back. He's a great baseball guy. I think, it's not his fault. But you wonder, okay, is Rob Thompson going to be around this club? I think he just kind of needs some time. So Rob Thompson talked this week about what's next for him and just what went wrong. And I'll tell you, Thompson still believes in this team. He has not lost faith. And you can tell that he kind of saw the writing on the wall over the last few days that, he may be let go. And he wasn't worried about it. But here's Rob Thompson talking about just what went down with the Phillies deciding to part ways with their manager and what might be next for Thompson and the Phillies.
Working on the Giants and doing all my prep work. I went in to work out, and then this morning I woke up normal, and I got a call from Dave about it's between 8 and 8:30. Said he was at the ballpark and would I stop by, and at that point I pretty much knew at that point that we were going to change and get a different voice, and so we just talked it out. My relationship with Dave Dombrowski is rock solid. I respect the man. I think he's one of the best baseball people I've ever been around. My relationship with John Middleton is rock solid. We all spoke this morning when when they notified me of my firing, and it was a great conversation. Having said that, we haven't played well, and for whatever reason. And when you're not playing well and you're the manager of a ball club, you're held accountable, and rightly so. So my message to the fans is this, and now I can say a few things. It's early. We went through a very difficult stretch, playing two of the best teams in baseball that were really hot, and we weren't playing well. And that's my responsibility when we're not playing well. So my message to the fans is this. I still think, and I hope, because I love these guys, that this team's going to turn this thing around. And they're going to get hot. I have a bunch of different reasons why, but one is the fact that there's a lot of talent in there. And if you look at the back of the baseball cards with these guys, usually they reach those numbers by the end of the year. So I think that they are going to turn around. I think you have to have talent, and we have talent. I think, I don't know. I can't put a percentage on what a manager matters, but the one thing that I tried to do throughout my 4 years here is let the players play and let the talent take care of themselves, and take care of itself, and try not to get in the way. When you got to fix things, try to fix it, but for the most part, let them play, and it's worked, and I think it's going to continue to work. We have some things to clean up, and I'm sure Donnie, who's a fantastic manager, is going to keep working at it, and I think this club's going to get straightened out. They got to keep playing, and they got to keep working and keep competing. So the conversations have been good. I'm sure that I'll talk to almost every one of them before too long anyway. One, I think I've been treated very fairly by all of you over the 4 years. I really have. And I think if you're an accountable person and you're a leader, you're going to stand up in front of people and answer the questions when it's all over. And I just wanted to make sure I did that in the right way. And it's like the last 4 years, I just hope that people feel like whether I did a good job or a bad job, I represented this organization properly, with class and with dignity. So this is all part of it to me. I wasn't officially offered anything, but I am open to staying in this organization. I've said throughout my 4 years as manager here, I don't want to go anywhere else. I love this organization. I've been treated with class and dignity the last 8 years, ever since I came here. And not only the organization, but the city of Philadelphia as well. We've had some really good times. We've had some bad times, but all in all, I think that I've been treated fairly by all of you and the city. And, I would seriously entertain staying with the organization. Maybe right now isn't the right time. Maybe we give it a little bit of a break here, but yeah, I'm all in on that.
Look, he's a good guy. He really is. Class act. Doing this for a long time. A lot of guys, when they get fired, let go, they vanish. They don't want to sit there and face the music and talk about their time coming to an end. I get it. I get it. And so for him to sit up there and answer some tough questions just kind of shows you what kind of guy he is. The move had to be made. It's not his fault. I don't think it's his fault. I think a lot of people would say it's not his fault, but the Phillies, they need a kick in the you-know-what. And will this be the answer? It was in 2022, and since things have gone backwards. So Don Mattingly, he's been here before with the Dodgers. He's been the manager of the Marlins. In L.A., he's gone through these stretches where the Dodgers were way out of it, and he found a way to lead them back into it. Will this happen? Will history repeat? There's a lot of baseball to be played. This isn't July. This isn't August. We're May 2nd, so there's a lot of baseball to be played. If you're the Sixers, there's not a lot of time left. Tonight is the night. Game 7, 7:30 in Boston. The best 2 words in sports, Game 7. And look, the Sixers are trying to end a really bad streak here tonight. A Philly sports team has not won a Game 7 since the Flyers beat the Buffalo Sabres in 2011. Listen to this. The last 7 Game 7s for Philly, Phillies lost in 2023, Sixers lost in 2023, Sixers lost in 2021, Flyers lost in 2020, Sixers lost in 2019, Flyers lost in 2014, Sixers lost in 2012. Again, the last Philly sports team to win a Game 7 15 years ago. The 2011 Flyers beat the Sabres. Enough is enough. As Joel Embiid said, I am sick and tired of losing to the Celtics. He has said before he hates the Boston Celtics. We will find out. Can this Sixers team finally end this awful streak against the Boston Celtics? And look, the Celtics, and I get why Embiid's upset at Boston. I mean, the Celtics have ended Embiid's seasons 3 times in the playoffs, 2018 in Game 5, 2020 in the first round. That was a sweep. And then, as we mentioned, 2023 in the second round. I mean, enough's enough, right? And is tonight the night? What I saw out of the Sixers in Game 6 was kind of that eye of the tiger mentality, that fight that I have not seen out of this team in years. I just haven't. And that was the biggest statement win I feel I have seen from the Sixers under the Joel Embiid regime, whatever you want to call it. In his time, that was the best win. And do they have enough fight for one more win tonight? And look, it's still the first round, right? So let's say they get past this round, they face the Knicks, they lose to the Knicks. It's not a successful season in my mind. But you have to find a way to win tonight. And this would be a statement win. You're 7.5-point underdogs in Boston, on the road. The way the series started, losing by 32 in Boston in Game 1, led you to believe this team's not in it. Then they lose again by 32 points. You're like, there's no way this team is capable of winning this series. But here they are. They did not go down quietly. They are still in this, and they have a shot tonight to finally knock off the Celtics in Game 7 on the road in a hostile environment. And you better have picture-in-picture tonight, because the Sixers-Celtics are going on at 7:30. You have the Flyers starting up at 8 o'clock. And why these two games are opposite each other, I find incredibly annoying. I don't know about you, but to watch both of these games at once, I don't love. But in any event, here the Flyers are. Nobody expected the Flyers to get to this point. They knock off Sidney Crosby and the Penguins. Here they are facing the Carolina Hurricanes for the first time ever in the playoffs. These two teams, they're not rivals. They haven't faced each other ever in the playoffs. This will be the first ever playoff meeting between the Flyers and the Hurricanes. And there's a few connections here. Remember Shane Gostisbehere, the defenseman, he's on the Hurricanes. And, of course, their head coach, a fan favorite, Rod Brind'Amour. Remember, he was traded to the Flyers by the Blues in 1991. Spent parts of 9 seasons with the Flyers as a player. Then he was moved to Carolina in 2000. Brind'Amour did not want to go. He did not. And then, he, of course, put the Flyers in that Stanley Cup final in 97. He was a great Flyer. He was a fan favorite. And Brind'Amour, he knows his fan base as well as anybody. And he was talking about it the last few days about this tough fan base, and he answered this perfectly. He said, no, they're not a tough fan base. They're a fair fan base. They're fair because he said, quote, if you put in a good effort, talking about the love that Philly fans have for you, if you don't put in the love, if you're not putting it in, they're going to let you know about it. He said the Philly fans are fair. The Philly fans cross the line at times, of course, but this is a great fan base. I would tell you the best fan base in the world. And Rod Brind'Amour says it right there. But the success he's had as a coach has been tremendous. And you wonder, can the Flyers continue on what I call a magical run right now? Nobody expected them here. And I know what Jim Jackson told us at the top of the broadcast here, that really they had one bad month. But this Flyers team, look, let's be honest. To go this far with this group right now on the run they've been on since March 11th is tremendous. They haven't had a lot of success against Carolina, 8-1-1 in their last 10 matchups against the Hurricanes, including this season, remember, they've lost 3 of 4. The only game they won that final game that helped them clinched the Flyers getting into the playoffs. So can they beat this team? They've had some close games against Carolina. I think they win game 1 tonight. Carolina's had a week off. The Flyers are in this mode of winning. And this is a young team that I don't think is satisfied with just knocking off the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think they have something left in them. So we will find out tonight. Game 1, second round of the playoffs, Flyers, Hurricanes on a busy day in Philadelphia sports. Again, Eagles rookie camp going on. Phillies, Marlins get underway at 4:10. JT Realmuto is back for the Phillies coming off the injured list. Kentucky Derby at 6:57. Yeah, some soccer. Let's not forget about the Union. They're taking on Nashville at 7:30. And, of course, Sixers Celtics Game 7 at 7:30 from Boston. And, again, Flyers, Hurricanes, 8 o'clock. Wouldn't it be something if all of the teams could win tonight? Phillies, Union, Sixers, Flyers. Can we sweep this Super Saturday? Let's not come in depressed tomorrow, right? Let's get a Philly Final Four win. Let's go 4-0 tonight. All right, that'll do it for us on Bet Parx Saturday, live from the Sportsbook here at Parx Casino in Ben Salem. We appreciate you joining us, and a special thanks to all of our guests today, from Jim Jackson from the Flyers, to Kai Carlin covering the Sixers for USA Today, to Jason Stark, the Hall of Fame writer for The Athletic, and, of course, Dick Girardi, some great insight on the 152nd running of the Kentucky Derby. That'll do it for us on Bet Parx Saturday, live here on PHLY Sports. For my producer, Julia Hoff, I'm Jeff Skversky. We'll see you right back here next Saturday on Bet Parx Saturday.
We all sitting like the mayor.